Please help me invite to the stage Chair Bernard and our commissioners, Commissioner Savas, Fisher, Hummerston, and Schrader. I think we'll start and we'll allow the commissioners each 2 minutes just for some opening comments. And we'll start with Chair Bernard and make our way down.
Well, thank you all for being here today. You can see we stacked the deck with county employees. I want to thank the North Clackamas Chamber of Commerce, the Clackamas County Business Alliance, Oregon City Business Alliance, Oregon City Chamber of Commerce for putting on this event. It's my favorite event. It's great to see a lot of the faces. I also want to, of course, thank staff, but introduce our county administrator sitting over there, Gary Schmidt. Would you please stand? I think it was yesterday. He's been here 1 year. Haven't had a problem he couldn't solve. As many of you know, in 2014, Clackamas County has been guiding our work using Clackamas County Performance, what's called Performance Clackamas. We just got out of a budget meeting. I'm nervous. The program is built around measurable outcomes by our county departments. Guiding the plan is a 5-year strategic priorities that was set by the board years ago. Each priority has key results, which the board updates over the last few months. To kick off today's event, each commissioner will relay one of the strategic priorities along with the results that we are seeking from each. I'm going to start with building public trust through good government. And we have two sought-after results in this priority. First is to build a courthouse. The courthouse was built in the 30s. The courthouse was built in the 30s and is slowly slipping its way into the river. It was built with one courtroom, and all the county departments were there. And we have gone from 50,000, wow, that 2 minutes flies, 50,000 to 420,000, so we need a new courthouse. Martha.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I get to speak about one of my favorite topics, which is growing a vibrant economy. And so let me talk to you about some of the metrics that we're using. By 2024, 80% of employers within targeted cluster survey will report that an adequately trained workforce is available to fill their family wage jobs. And I know Bridget Daisy is in the audience. Where are you, Bridget? She's our guru of workforce. By 2024, 80% of businesses that pay family wage jobs seeking to locate or expand in Clackamas County will find servable commercial or industrial properties which meet their particular business needs. And by 2024, 75% of participants in the Community Prosperity Pilot Program have experienced improvement in financial stability and access to affordable, healthy foods. Supporting our local economy is an absolute for us. It's critical for the county to do, and that's why we essentially have a county division dedicated to economic development. And I see all our folks at the table back there. Let's give them a hand. We could not. Cindy, John, Scott, and Rick, they're really the heroes of this initiative. And I'm here to let you know today that one of the things we are starting to work on is a Clackamas County global trade activities. I'm going to have the opportunity to go to the National Association of Counties, where I serve as vice chair of the International Trade Committee. And once I'm there, I will be presenting. And I hope you ask some questions about this initiative because I have all the information in front of me. So thank you. Mr. Savas.
Yes, well, it's great to be back, everyone. One of our other strategic priorities is infrastructure and building a strong infrastructure. Particularly, the biggest challenge we have is transportation. Two of our top goals have been the Sunrise Corridor, which has been on the books for 38 years. and the I-205 widening project at the bottleneck between the Stafford Road exit and Oregon City. These are huge priorities for the county, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Sunrise, because it really holds the future. Our past commissions from years back, decades back actually, saw that really the growth, the housing, the jobs, all the essential aspects of business and housing that we really needed laid in the Sunrise. We call it the Gateway, the Sunrise Gateway. But we have always fought a political headwind, and no more is that headwind as strong as it is today. There's just a political movement afoot that seems to be anti-road, anti-development as far as those essential needs. And here we are facing a huge housing crisis. We need to be able to keep our job growth strong. We need to keep our business base strong. And yet we just don't seem to be, we're fighting this anti-road kind of movement. And that's unfortunate. Yesterday as well, the legislature, and if there's a question later on, I'll speak to that. But yesterday, the legislature, we had a bill, Representative Prusak, about widening 205, and Metro came in and opposed the bill. So it's very difficult knowing that we need that balance. We need to strike that balance, and that's there. The 205 project's a no-brainer. It's a regional asset, and hasn't been our #1 goal, but we consider it a regional goal. But again, 10,000 jobs, 10,000 homes, that's huge. Not to mention the people that go with those 10,000 homes. So you can figure about 25,000 people there. So it's critical for our future. I'll stop there, and I'll hand over to my colleague, Mr. Humberston.
Thank you, Paul. One of our strategic priorities has been a climate action plan. 2008, there was an original plan. Unfortunately, it basically got shelved. We will be redoing that, or actually in the process of redoing that. It will not get shelved going forward, and our long-term objective is a carbon-free county by 2050. We have some additional initiatives that we are working on, some of which will not be a surprise to you. But first and foremost, workforce housing, as I think all of us know, is a priority. Hopefully, we will be able to make a dent in the housing crisis that we have here. There are initiatives going forward, which can be spoken to later, that will help us do that. I'd like to thank Martha in particular for a pollination initiative that she has brought forward to the board. So as we go forward, looking at our properties here in Clackamas County, not only the ones that the county owns, but also encouraging others to make sure that the plantings that they do are favorable to pollinators. Long term, of course, I think everybody in the room that's here likes to eat, and we know that pollinators are crucial to that factor. An initiative that I'm personally interested in is one called High-Speed Internet, making that available to every home and business in Clackamas County, partnering where we can with the companies that currently do it, but in the final analysis, making sure that it gets done. And then the last one, I think, will be of no surprise to anybody in the room. It's called cross-laminated timber. And after 4.5 years of work, we are proud to announce that Souter Timber will be locating a plant for processing of cross-laminated timber in Estacada, and we have 2 other companies in the related field that are also looking in the same area. Those are going to be family wage jobs, which I believe is the key to housing people in the future. We will not be able to do that with $15 an hour jobs.
Thank you, Commissioner Humberston. So nice to be here with all of you today. Thank you for the honor and privilege to share our county with you. So what we've been talking about is this. This is Performance Clackamas County Plan. We carry this with us everywhere we go. No, not really. But we do have it before us at every meeting that we attend and when we have our policy sessions to remind us what our focus is. And what I want to talk with you about is ensuring safe, healthy, and secure communities. The public safety net is such an important role for county government. So our key measurable results, which we are focusing around, are first, reducing domestic violence, also creating more units of affordable housing, reducing chronic homelessness, and also reducing homelessness for our children and families. So I don't need to convince anyone here what a challenge it is with our homeless crisis that we're experiencing. Just on the way here, I drove with Martha and with Mary Jo. There was a gentleman in a tent on Beaver Creek sidewalk. It's everywhere. Houselessness is everywhere. And why? Why is it so bad? Well, the in-migration of people actually at the higher incomes, which has pushed down the ability for people at the lower levels to have the housing stock available to have affordable housing, is a huge area. Also, for a one-bedroom apartment, it costs somebody has to make $24 an hour to afford a one-bedroom apartment in the regional area. So 56,000 people are on the verge of homelessness. This is a crisis we can't ignore, and I'm sure we'll have more opportunity to share with you some of the initiatives, one in particular that Metro has referred to the ballot as of yesterday. So hot off the press. And with that, we are turning it back to the chief.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you, Nellie, for keeping time. God, I see that stop go up, and we're following directions today. All right, we have a few questions that we'll begin with. Let's spend 2 or 3 minutes for whomever would like to answer that question. We'll sort of take a journey through Clackamas County, and then please, with the note cards and pens on your table, if you have questions, please write those down, and chamber staff is happy to pick those up. Well, where should we start? Should we start with a softball like cap and trade? No, we shouldn't. So, let's move on to one that we have talked about and heard a little bit about, but what is the status of the Clackamas County Veterans Village, and has it achieved its goals of helping homeless veterans become self-sufficient and attain housing?
Well, I'll jump in, and maybe Commissioner Humberson can help out. So we've moved 19 veterans through the veteran shelter and into permanent housing, which I think is a huge win, huge success. I want to thank Commissioner Humberson in particular, because when he came on, the first thing I asked him to do is go with me and go look at some of these shelters and look at some of these programs that actually work. And can you actually have a shelter that can actually move people and do it in a safe way, and do it in a way that doesn't impact your neighbors, and in this case, the business community nearby. Commissioner Schrader and I initiated that effort, and then later on, Commissioner Humberson came on, and I think we had enough support at that time to move on that. And so it's been a success. Clayton Moore opened, and I think as a response to the fact that we were making an investment in veterans housing, Northwest Housing Alternatives built the Clayton Moore facility, 24 permanent units of housing for veterans. And the very first day we opened that, the first gentleman I talked to there had moved into the veteran shelter in February of 2019, just last year, and was moving into permanent housing at Clayton Moore in November of last year. So that's a huge win, a huge success. So that's what I have to report. Commissioner Humberson, you want to add?
Briefly, I go to breakfast with a group of veterans the first Friday of the month every month, and as a result of them learning about this program, now several of the veterans that are not homeless have been volunteering out at the Veterans Village, one providing haircuts for the people at the village, another teaching cooking classes, and now the Granges are involved and they're providing meals. So it's really become a true community effort.
So yes, it's been successful.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so yes, it's been successful.
So yes, it's been successful. Short answer.
It's all good.
Oops. All right. Next question. A vehicle registration fee went into effect earlier this year within Clackamas County. The fee is expected to raise more than $11 million every year. Where is that money going, and how will it help businesses?
Okay, I'll take that. Since 1986, it went to the voters at least 8 times to try and get either a gas tax or something else, some other way of local funding for roads here in Clackamas County. We have more roads than anybody else in the state, and we had no local sources of income. Our neighbors to the north had an additional $17 million on top of what the state gave them, and our neighbors to the west had an additional $49 million. We were then $300 million behind in maintenance of our 1,800 miles of roads. So we made the decision. It was time to stop making excuses and saying, oh, well, the voters said no, and recognize that the single most important asset that we have and what everything else depends upon are the roads here in Clackamas County. So we did the vehicle registration fee. We took the recommendations of citizens in the community. We made, instead of a $54 a year, it's $30 a year on passenger vehicles and $15 a year on motorcycles. Another recommendation was that the money would be in a specific fund that could be tracked by the general public. And another recommendation was that we would have a community group of volunteers that would work with our transportation staff in prioritizing projects. All of those things are being done as we speak. And we will continue that process. It will be very open, and you will be able to track what's being done with the money.
We also took 10% of our share and applied that towards roads within cities that we own, where we can repair them and turn them over to the city, therefore taking them off our inventory. And C4, Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, be working on how to spend that money, and we're trying to make Clackamas County Coordinating Committee more relevant.
Can I add something, Fred, to this
Sure,
too?
you bet.
You know, I've been here for a while, and it's true, but what Commissioner Humberton shared, we have tried multiple times to really get a vote passed, whether it be a gas tax, vehicle reg, and it's time. Because of the size of the roads, and we continually were falling behind maintenance. So I was at the point, having tried this numerous times, that it was time, to me, it would have been irresponsible not to go forward with something of this sort because of the need. And we have really looked at specific projects. So for congestion relief, in the next 5 to 8 years, we're looking at Johnson Creek Boulevard, the Canby Markham Highway, Lone Elder Road intersection, Redland Road intersections, Stafford Road, Welch's Rose, Barlow Road, Amsinger Road, and then local paving projects, which will be completed by 2021, is Aldertress Court, Antigua Avenue, Cypress Avenue, so on and so forth. And finally, we have specific safety improvements. It's, for example, Johnson Creek Boulevard, Sunnyside Rose, and Sunnybrook. So one of the things that I think it's very important that people bring home with them today, yes, we had to take the risk to raise a fee, but we are also putting it towards very specific projects that have been identified so the public can really see that we are being accountable with these dollars.
One brief point I was reminded of by staff, and that is that 40% of that money goes to the cities. So those of you who are residents of a city rather than the unincorporated area or serving on cities, 40% of that money is going to you based on population for your roads also.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you to everyone. We have a nice stack of questions here. They don't look too complicated, and they are organized. So there are a few themes. So these three, I think, could be summarized in this question. How is the county engaging or not in Metro's proposed new tax for the homelessness? Will Clackamas receive funds?
Yes. Okay, so I'll go ahead and take that one. So we have been heavily engaged with the Here Together Advisory Committee. I've been our commission's liaison to that effort, which includes business leaders, philanthropists, other local elected officials, and service providers. And that effort has been meeting for over a year and a half to really understand the issue and to come to consensus on what the approach is. So right here is the many different studies that have been completed to come up with what Metro referred yesterday, which is basically a framework for reducing homelessness, and what it will do is provide services. We all remember the Metro housing bond, which provided the bricks and sticks to build affordable units throughout the region. Clackamas County will benefit heavily from that. It will provide most of the units for people at the lowest end of the income, the most challenged. What it didn't do is provide the services that are needed for people to stay housed. So that includes wraparound services, meeting a person where they are with what their needs are. It may be addiction treatment, it might be job services, it might be peer mentoring, it might be transportation, it could be whatever it is to help that individual transition from homelessness to stability. We, the Board of County Commissioners, did yesterday unanimously support Metro referring this measure to the ballot. And for us in Clackamas County, it is so critical. So just one little point just to make. We have some permanent supportive housing units in Clackamas County. If everybody who is on the wait list were to be housed, it would take 20 years to help those most challenged and vulnerable people in our community. The other area that's very persuasive to all of us is just the quality of life for our residents, the sense of feeling safe and secure in our communities, the impact this has on business. We want to make sure that we have a community where businesses can thrive in Clackamas County and throughout the region. So with that, a lot of work was done with the Portland Business Alliance, who was at the table really guiding the conversation, especially around the taxing measure. It will tax 1% income tax on individuals that are taxed on over $125,000 a year, the amount above that, and for joint filers, over $200,000 a year. So that means that if there is a single person raising children, they would not be taxed until they met the threshold of $200,000 a year. We really wanted to make sure that families were really buffered from this. And then there will be an additional tax. This is modeled after Multnomah County's business income tax, which the business community likes the way that is structured if there is going to be a tax. They like the way that's structured. It is based on net profits, and businesses that have 5 million or less in sales are exempt. So it will tax very few, and percentage-wise, of the businesses in the region.
So you asked about how much Clackamas County, we're still figuring that out, but Clackamas County shares 21.33% of the revenue, and we're gonna look at that in 2 years. The other thing is that people will say, well, Metro doesn't do this. Metro isn't doing it. Metro's just gonna put it on the ballot and kind of be the general oversight, and we're gonna have experts in our counties, in the 3 counties, to figure out how to spend this, get the best value for the buck.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you to everyone who's provided us with questions. I think we have enough for next year. Next question. Let's start to take a path down really helping support our business community. The state legislature is considering disconnecting Oregon from the federal tax incentive programs for opportunity zones. How will this affect the county's 6 zones, and will it prevent investors from stepping forward?
Well, we just approved one yesterday in Canby. Right now, we have an agreement to move forward on these, and Canby City Council will have to decide whether they do. They support it, and then the state will have to finally approve it. Right now, I think opportunity zones are a great investment. My understanding, however, is that they didn't really work with the fire districts on this, which they're required to do in urban renewal. So that would be one of my issues, is that maybe we need to step back and involve the districts who actually lose revenue because of opportunity zones. However, the positive thing about it is I believe it's the first 25 million of an investment is taxed normally, and there's a community fee, I think is the term, that is also paid, and so it isn't all of it that is not taxed. It's everything after the 25 million. So it's a good draw for large businesses to come to Clackamas County, but the community fee's not enough to really backfill the taxes that would be left behind.
Thank you. And this will be a two-part question. Let's start with the first one. How is CAT, the Corporate Activities Tax, impacting local businesses, or how will it impact local businesses, nonprofits, and construction? We'll move on to part two.
I just want to give we don't make those decisions because we're not legislators, but we do talk to legislators a lot. So please, for those of you who have businesses, who are in the business community, please, please, please tell us what your experience is. Because what I'm hearing out there is that it's really challenging to figure out what the reporting mechanisms are to, if you make over, I'm looking at Laura to tell me, is it over $1 million in activity, then you have to fill out these forms and register? And is that right? I don't know specifically, but please tell us what works and what doesn't work. While we can't change it, we are a voice for you. We are your local voice in helping to relay those messages to the legislature.
I'd just like to add that when we were looking at the Here Together funding, I referred back to a corporate activity tax that I paid at a small business when I was told there would be no impact. But there was an impact of about $6,000. When you're a small business, $6,000 can mean a lot. So one of the things we talked with Portland Business Alliance on the Here Together funding is not to have an impact on small businesses. And I think that the corporate, the one you're talking about, starts at the revenue. That's before expenses. And I don't know, sometimes your expenses exceed your revenue, and that's not what we wanted to impact.
So I just took a look at this, and so the information I have says on May 16th, it was 2019, it was House Bill 3427, and it was a tax that establishes a fund for student success. It is separate and distinct from the state's general fund. It adopts a new corporate activity tax imposed on all types of business entities, and it is in addition to the state's current corporate income tax, and the revenue will be transferred to the Fund for Student Success and will be used for education spending. I know that there is actually a site where you can subscribe to the corporate activity tax mailing list. Quite frankly, I don't know how it's affecting the businesses in the county because I haven't spoken to them about it. But if this is something that we need to be aware of, and we need to lobby our legislatures to let them know that maybe this is good or maybe this is really bad, I suggest that we use you as our resource to make sure that we are in alignment with your government and public and government affairs when it comes to business issues. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
So we'll back out of CAT a little broader view. Based on the corporate activities tax, transportation measure, affordable housing bond, preschool tax, homeless measures, and taxing, how do we avoid voter fatigue and make sure we are prioritizing the funding that we do receive?
Well, one of my biggest concerns is that part of the reason we have people who can't afford homes is property tax increases. We have to stay away from property tax as much as we can. I think there's definitely fatigue with property taxes. And so when we were talking about the Here Together, we didn't want to go there. And I'm on the T2020 task force that's looking at Metro's transportation funding, and we voted, I think unanimously, not to add that to property taxes. I think we're pushing people out because they can't afford their property taxes, and we need to figure out a different way. I won't suggest any, but we need to figure out a different way to, to fund things we're doing, and property taxes can't be it.
So I just want to add to that in that this was a vote to refer it to our support is to refer it to the voters. I am worried that we're going to be seeing tax fatigue. I think that's likely. I know I've talked to a number of people. They are somewhat concerned that the voters in the whole region actually may be getting very, very, very weary of this. And from my perspective, I do support giving it to the voters and let them decide whether or not we want to move forward with that. It will be up to the advocacy groups to actually talk about that and to give you all the information you need to make a yes or no on it. But I do think tax fatigue is going to be a very real issue at this point. But that's just that is my personal opinion, and I'm not speaking for the board on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I'm kind of concerned about the cumulative effect of all of these taxes, and when there's a couple of them we haven't even talked about yet, and probably most of us are going to be impacted that. So in a way, yeah, I suppose the property tax, I don't disagree that that's got its impacts, but if you are paying other taxes or you have new taxes on top and it still comes out of your pocket, really it's the same pocketbook that we're all paying from, whether it comes as a property tax or whether it comes as an income tax or increase in gasoline tax or whatever it may be. So that's my concern. I do know from the business side of it, being in business for 25 years, I think it's been a great experience in discovering, frankly, that these things have a cumulative effect, and we always want to reward our employees, our good employees, and paying them what we can, and the increase of health insurance over the years. All these things have really added up, and frankly, some businesses closed down. We had the minimum wage, another impact that's had. And granted, people do need to have an increase in their minimum wage. We all understand that, but I'm kind of concerned about our competitiveness, and I've always kind of felt that from a standpoint of that really, if the federal government did some of this stuff, and that those taxes were spread around the state, that Oregon can remain competitive with everyone else. Otherwise, we could literally price ourselves out, some of our businesses could actually price themselves right out of the state, and that's a concern for the very employees and the very people and our neighbors and our communities that impact us. So I have that concern, especially with what's around the corner. We're going to have a funding measure in May. We're going to have several in November, and we're going to have more to come. So our wages, I don't think, are going up at that rate. The taxes are.
Okay, thank you. And just for all the members in the audience, thank you so much for your questions. Just so you know, because I know nobody is going to slip out early, we're gonna cover a little bit on tax revenue at the county, public transportation, coronavirus. We'll probably wrap up with that, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we'll talk about some of the other challenges to include the Sunrise Corridor. So those questions are coming. This is a great question. I think I'd ask maybe each one of you to answer it and see if your answers differ. But what is the most important issue facing Clackamas County, and how will you address it?
Let's start.
Yeah. Do you want me to start at the end since you guys have been talking most of the time? So I think it's maintaining our quality of life. And I know this is a total punt to the most single issue, but you can't really look at one issue in isolation without really integrating them all. So right now, with the homeless crisis, that affects the livability of every resident in our community. And tied to that, we have transportation, and we're spending too much time in our cars, and that affects livability. And then when you tie that to the incredibly important need for public safety, we have to promote and support our first responders and our effort to make sure we have a safe, stable community. So with that, I don't think we can say a single most. We have to look at everything holistically and approach it conscientiously and strategically.
This may sound a little strange coming from the union guy up here, but in my opinion, it's all built on a solid economy. And without a good, strong economy, which means a good, strong business climate that can afford to pay living wages to people and not just minimum wages, everything that I've talked about up here and everything that we want to do as a commission, as city managers in the community, is all based on affordability. Do we have the money to do all of these things? And you don't get that money unless you have a healthy economy. That means a healthy business climate, and it means paying wages that people can actually live on. I would suggest that even at $15 an hour, given the cost of housing, even if we took 2,000 acres and built everything, and allowed the builders to build everything they want to build, with little or no serious extraneous expenses, at $15 an hour, nobody's going to be able to afford to rent it or buy it. The reality is that wages have not kept up with the cost of living in this country. We have shipped jobs overseas, and we have automation more and more replacing jobs, and those two things alone have left us with more of a service economy, and the service economy jobs do not pay, oftentimes, living wages. How you square that circle, I don't know. I'm not an expert on it, but I do know that if we expect people to lift themselves up by their bootstraps, they have to have the financial bootstraps to do so. And if you are a single man or a single woman with maybe a kids because there's been a divorce, and you're trying to go to work 8 hours a day and take care of your kids, you tell me, when do you go to school and get a little more education and get a little more training? That is something that we all are going to have to work on. We had a thing today at the Economic Development Commission talking about childcare. With men and women both working nowadays to support a family, who's taking care of the kids? There's not enough slots of good childcare for kids, and there's a consequence for that. And that consequence, we see increased juvenile crime, we see increased child homelessness, and all of the other social ills that go with that. So we're going to have to take a really holistic view at the economy that we have built and work together to figure out how we get family wage jobs, which is why my focus has been on the issues that you've heard me talk about incessantly.
My takeaway, or my answer to that is really, I think it's the budgets, and not just the county budget, which is a big problem in and of itself, or a challenge, but also the budgets we have. I mean, Commissioner Humberston made some good points, but we also have to recognize that the state has seen record revenues as a result of our economy. It's very hot. We at the county have seen record revenues from our tax base. So the times are as good as they're going to be, and it's kind of daunting to think that when the economy takes a little bit of a dip or plateaus, we're not really ready for it, and we don't think we have the reserves, or we've done really the planning to actually face the realities. And I think that trickles down, frankly, to our families, our people who make up our population, our communities. And the crisis really is, the real answer to this whole thing, or the symptom of all this is, it's complicated. There's not one cause of this. Is the rapid rise of the cost of housing. It is really driving people out on the street. We're seeing that. That is the anomaly. We can't tell someone who's retired, who's 85 years old, unfortunately, this one lady who's living in a mobile home park around the corner from where I live. 85 years old, her rents are have gone up tremendously over the last few years, and she's not gonna get a job at any wage. She can't work. So whether the minimum wage isn't gonna help her, it's not gonna help a lot of people that are retired. It's the cost of housing that is hurting everyone, and it's causing this extreme inflation. The cost to rent a building for a business is going up. The cost of land. These are impacting everyone in this room. Our families. That's the crisis we're facing. We're not very well prepared to deal with that.
Can you repeat the question just one more time? This has been coming down here.
If I can find it.
I have a short memory, okay, but I got some
The
good
biggest
stuff
challenge
here.
facing the county.
I think we were asking
The biggest challenge facing
the biggest challenge, and I think I'm going to need Nellie's help. Let's try and keep it to a minute. Sorry, we have to start
all right,
this
Ellie.
with Commissioner Schrader.
So I'm gonna, do I talk too much?
No, not at all. No, I just want to make sure we get through we have about 12 minutes. I'd like to get through 4 or 5 more questions.
Okay, thank you. So for me, it's workforce training, and it's job creation, it's expansion, retention, and then seeing what else we can grow here in the county, and I have some stats here about that. We have a number of key clusters in this county that have surpassed the county-wide job growth rates: high-tech, software, media production, professional business service, food and beverage manufacturing, and healthcare. Some of our more mature clusters include wholesale trade, advanced manufacturing, metals and machinery, nurseries, greenhouses, agriculture and food production, and wood manufacturing. So what do you do to help businesses stay here? Well, for one thing, you know what clusters you have, and then you go to your businesses and you find out what do you need. And I'm looking at Lori here, Olin, because I think that's what we first did years ago. What do you need to succeed? What are the barriers? Is it land use? Is it taxation issues? I mean, let us know, because then we can start as a government body to help move that forward. And I think that's very important. And also I'm sorry, Nellie, I'm going to talk, Fred, sorry, okay. But seriously, I'm only kidding. And I also think workforce training, and I'm looking at our superintendent in the audience, Larry, that basically your work with your school district and Clackamas Community College in terms of manufacturing hubs and getting students trained and the skill sets up. And I know Bridget is back there too. She is also working on all of those issues, including the childcare piece, which we are continually finding is a real barrier for people to have a job and keep the job because they need to have their children cared for. So, sorry.
No, great.
Fred,
How much time did she have?
Was I too bossy?
No,
No.
you have 1 to 15 minutes, whatever you would like.
I'll fill it.
Let's just go for 1.
So one thing about the Metro initiative that Paul actually mentioned is that 85-year-old woman living in a trailer park. You know, prevention saves you a lot of money, get people out of the street. So we're trying to prevent homelessness. The other thing is we're looking at things through an equity lens, equity, diversity, and inclusion. The other is climate. You know, that's really important. So we're using a climate lens. We're creating a climate action plan. So we're looking at what we can do to, reduce our carbon footprint, healthy, active lifestyle. We're also looking at family stability. But what's important, I think, is that we're investing our money where it can have the greatest impact. And that is called, and I have to look this up every time, equity zones. Is that right? So no one's going to help me over there.
Prosperity collaboratives.
Yes. So we're investing our money where we can do the most good. We have a grant program. We have a $250,000 grant program, and we're taking a look at Canby, Milwaukee, Oregon City, and I think there's one, Milwaukee. I said Milwaukee.
SDK.
Okay, see, now I'm looking to them. They're the people who do the hard work. So we're investing where we can do the most good. I'd like to see that grant program get up a lot higher. Someday in the future, we'll be able to do that. And we're working really hard in having a sustainable budget. And we can do that. So I look forward to completion of the budget process in June.
Okay, thank you. I think we have 2 natural follow-ups to that. So the first question is, what efforts is the county making to support diversity and inclusion internally within Clackamas County and throughout the community?
Gary, you want to answer that?
Well, basically, I will look at our great administrator, Gary Schmidt, because we have recently gone through a process with our human resources folks to really beef up what we do. And what we came up with, we are actually going to have an equity and diversity person. Let me know, Gary, if I'm correct with this, that is going to be under your umbrella, and we're going to have an internal person and an external person, because we have a number of different, internally we want to make sure that we have diversity in our workforce, and what are the processes and the metrics we use to get there, and that means also hiring externally. And then the second piece of this is the external piece, because we have growing populations in this county, and actually the highest growth area in one particular group is in Happy Valley, and that is Asian American, believe it or not, highest growing group. So we want to make sure that the groups that are here are Hispanic populations, our Russian population, all those folks, but also we have a high growth area out in Happy Valley. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
As a follow-up to something we heard a few minutes ago, Clackamas County is home to 5 of the top 10 fastest growing cities. State of Oregon tax revenue continues to dramatically exceed forecasts. Why is Clackamas County asking its department heads to prepare budgets with potentially large budget cuts? Where is the tax revenue being spent from all of the growth within the county?
So I think we're being proactive in looking at the future. As you know, the cost of PERS, the cost of the equal pay amendment, other costs have continued to grow, but our tax revenue is not growing at the same pace. So we're proactively making efforts to address that. We're asking those people to look at those kind of cuts so that we're sure that what they're providing is the best product they can, that what their service they're giving meets our goals and priorities, and actually we get the best bang for the buck. So I ask them to look at 15 is just an effort to make them look deeper into the services they provide. I'm sure Paul has something.
Yeah, I have a different answer. So over the years, we've had some fantastic people on our budget committee, the volunteer part. We've had some financial experts have their life's experience in finances. We've worked together, we've identified issues. We realized that at some point in time, way back, 9 years ago, that at some point in time, that expenses would outpace revenues. And when those lines cross, we always nicknamed the jaws of death, if you look at a graph. But when those lines cross, we needed to be, number one, prepared in advance for that. Number two, figure out how we're going to adjust our budget accordingly. And we had an issue with differing forecast. And when the forecasts were not jiving and people spoke up, it was unfortunately it was often really not. They weren't heard. We weren't heard. I was not heard. We was somewhat dismissed. I'm sorry to have to say this, but it's just a fact. And so we found ourselves unprepared. I figured that the line we crossed the line here probably about 3 years ago, didn't really realize it. And instead of making the cuts in that period of time, we made commitments, expenditures at that period of time. So now we need to slowly or aggressively bring that back and kind of control our budget. We just came out of a budget meeting just prior to this. It was a very difficult discussion because now we're talking about how many years out we are comfortable with before we can actually attain a sustainable budget. Think about that for a minute. Attain a sustainable budget. We'll balance it, but we're not going to be able to attain a sustainable budget. Possibly, I think the consensus may have been 3 to 5 years. That's a comfort level. I can't get there. I just can't get comfortable with saying we can't do the cuts that we responsibly need to make sooner than 3 to 5 years.
Okay, can I do a point counterpoint with this? Because you're my good friend and I
Oh,
love
yeah.
you to death. Okay,
I
all
love
right.
Martha dearly.
In a positive way. So let me tell you, from my perspective, what is really indeed happening. There are two things happening. One is that we have been really doing this budget the same way since 1970, okay? And we've always had a balanced budget. However, we are now in the 21st century. The pace of information has changed. The kind of tools that you use to do forecasts have changed. The whole computer piece of all of this has been light years ahead, and we've been stuck in 1970. So what we're really doing internally now, and I think we deserve, I think we deserve a lot of credit for catching this now, quite frankly, so we don't continue to go down this way. So what we're having staff do is do a whole internal analysis and upgrade our software and change our policies and procedures to move into the 21st century so we get accurate month by month information from every single agency we have about where we are. That's the first step. We are going to be doing that. We're moving toward it. And the other piece of this is it's to the metrics. It's, what is it called? Help me.
We're talking.
Is this your lifeline?
Okay. No, it is what we're doing also with our accountability piece. It really is this piece. It's really having our performances, this whole performance level that we're doing with every single agency we have. So there are metrics. We can measure them. We can tie the budget to that. So I would like to assure everybody out there that yes, we are moving forward to do things bigger and better in this county to make sure this budget is right-sized. And as someone who's had a background in organizational change, the only thing I disagree with you, my friend, is this, that I think a glide path is a little better, largely because we are going to be changing internal and external practices, and we have to give a $1.2 billion business organization that is your county, which is a complex organization, the time to remedy this in a glide path. Remember, we're not a small county. We're a billion-dollar enterprise. And to try and cut all at once, I think would cause so much turbulence that it would be counterproductive. So the commissioner and I disagree. I agree with the cuts, but I have a reason as to why I think a glide path might be a better way. And then I'm just going to leave you with one word with budgets: inflation.
I want to add
and
something.
no timbermen.
We don't have time for arguing back and forth. But we saved $4 million thanks to Gary's efforts in 6 months by not hiring. We can save $4 million more if we don't hire another 6 months. We can solve this problem very quickly by just not hiring, only hiring those people who we really absolutely need. He has to approve the hiring, and they have to prove that we should hire that position.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have 2 minutes and 2 questions.
Good luck.
And then we'll provide you each a minute to wrap up. We're getting close to 1 o'clock. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So these are not easy questions, but we would like to get just a little bit of insight, and we do appreciate everyone who's submitted your questions.
This
Well,
goes to 1:15, by the way.
1:15? Well, I know how we're trending. I think the closing will take us. We look at trends in the fire service. What will it take to get Sunrise Corridor supported as a regional priority and funded?
That's yours.
Okay, I'll take that. As we know, as I kind of alluded to earlier, a lot of you know that Metro's looking at a T2020 measure, and Washington County's looking at their corridors in Multnomah County, but instead of the county actually saying to Metro, we said this is what we want, it's really the other way around. Metro's telling us what they're going to give us, and they're not going to give us the adequate means in order to build the Sunrise. It's a $477 million project. They're going to give us maybe 180, and we're still trying to even keep that 180 in this workings as they go forward. So without federal state funding, I don't see how we ever fill the gap. And this is an opportunity to support or get this project built. We're struggling. As I mentioned, the 205 is being fought. The Rose Corridor project is being fought. It's not just the Sunrise. There's a political movement out there that is anti-road that actually, if you look at what they're studying tolling of I-205 and I-5. They're studying tolling, the Metro is, of the entire region. Portland's studying tolling. Every road, and Metro is as well, every road in the area, you're looking at cap and trade, which could actually cost even more transportation dollars. All these dollars, and really, I'm concerned that it's really going to be a net loss when it comes to actually building anything, because they're part of these projects are to take lanes away and dedicate them to bus. So congestion is no longer a goal to solve. It is a goal to accomplish more congestion, to essentially social engineer and force people out of their cars. That's not good for business. That's just flat not good for business, and it's not good for a lot of us. So that's a conundrum. The answer to the question, it's a political battle more than it is a financial battle.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
So I want to just add a little bit to that. I'm on the T2020, which is Metro's task force. We went from $0 to the Sunrise to 181. We have 181 million. We went the Clackamas, Columbia. That's the road that will help Happy Valley a lot and will help Clackamas County a lot. We were to $0 at one point. Right now, it looks like it's going to be funded. McLaughlin Boulevard gets a couple $100 million, and there's a great place to invest where the infrastructure, the roads, the people live. And we can do that with this money if it passes. My concern, again, is I haven't been told how we're going to fund it yet. And I've been to 18 meetings. So I'm a little concerned about that. All I know is it's not going to be property taxes. So your guess is as good as mine.
Just want to add one thing that I forgot to mention is that every county, every jurisdiction, Portland included, every county got what they wanted in the first phase, or not the first tier, but the first tier, except for Clackamas County.
So it's about building relationships. And Clackamas County had damaged the relationships, and we're working hard to repair that. Before, they wouldn't even talk to me. You know, kids were lining up against the Sunrise Project, literally lining up, every one of them. No more roads, no Sunrise. And by the time we were done, it was unanimous. That's a big move.
Thank you.
38 years.
One additional,
18 meetings.
one additional question around Metro. I don't know if it'll help or hurt the conversation, but when will we disconnect from Metro so we can retain our taxes and invest in ourselves? If that hurts the conversation, we'll move on.
Show of hands, show of hands.
Show of hands, okay.
All right, let's move on to our last question so we can be respectful of your time. And this is, at the EDC meeting this morning, the issue was raised about the potential impacts of the coronavirus or COVID-19 on Clackamas businesses. So that's one part of the question. How will it impact our businesses from where you sit, but then also what are we doing to prepare for that? And I know that's a very broad question, but if we can just spend just a minute or two on that important issue.
Yeah, I would just like to say we are the public health body, and our public health experts, our physician, our human services folks are on top of it. I daily get updates about what's been going on at the CDC, the disease control folks. They are not calling it a pandemic yet, but there is this notion that it could very well explode into that. They're kind of in a wait and see mode. So the advice that we're giving people is wash your hands, you know, the usual, wash your hands. If you feel sick, stay home. If you really feel sick and you think you might have been exposed to it, contact the health department so you can get tested. I do think that we have to be very aware of this. I know that Multnomah County, that their health program as well, is poised to respond should, if and when, and the CDC is saying when, we start to see cases here in the United States. So that's what I know so far from those updates.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, why don't we spend a minute with each commissioner, just providing you an opportunity to wrap up, and then we'll say a few announcements and our thank yous. So, Commissioner Fisher, would you like to start? And we'll come this way.
Sure. So I talked about this a little bit, but I want to emphasize ever so strongly how important our collaboration with our constituents is. This is where we get our best information, our best education, and our prioritization is from all of you and your neighbors and your friends and the children that go to your neighborhood schools. We really depend on hearing from our constituents. And I would say that the efforts, that all of this right here is because of what you've all told us. We conduct surveys with our community to prioritize what is most important. We are always listening, our doors are always open, and we value you. This is teamwork and partnership, and you are all so very appreciated. So thank you.
I just would like to use my time, my 1 minute here, to say thank you to a couple of people. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to Chief Charlton and his program called Project Hope. The opportunity to ride with Amy Jo Cook, who is the person who is actually working that program. Essentially what that program does through the fire department is find people that are what they call frequent flyers that are always calling 911 and cost us a great deal of tax dollars when they have to be taken to the hospital repeatedly. And they have managed to make us the only county in Oregon that last year had less 911 calls than this year, or than the previous year. So I want to say thank you to the chief for sponsoring that program, and I'm hoping that we'll figure out a way to help you out a little bit on that. And the other one I would like to say thank you to is that the solder timber project that is going to go into Estacada would not have happened without our economic development team, and importantly, the mayor of Estacada, Mayor Drinkwine, and his team worked with our team to make this happen, and there will be a groundbreaking in the very near future, and once they get that off the ground, it will be starting with 25 family wage jobs in Estacada. And that takes, by the way, 25 people off the road driving into town. So thank you to those people doing that work.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just tell folks that, we have about 420,000 citizens in this county. It's growing, the number's growing. And we have we all collectively, even in this room, have a responsibility to those 420,000 people. And it's a tough job. Actually, we have to make some tough decisions going forward with the challenges we face. So first of all, I want to just say thank you for this forum. And I want to segue from there into, we need more of these forums. We really need to hear. I went on the road last year. I did 3 town halls and participated in 2 others for a total of 5. And the feedback I got at the very end is, we need more of this. We need more of this, and we want to see your colleagues as well. My colleagues here, they want to be heard, and I think that in order for us to make those right decisions, we need to be engaged with the community as much as possible. I do want to, again, acknowledge and thank the Chamber for this opportunity. We just need more of it, and all the good work out there in public safety, the people in the room here that do all the great work you do, employ all the people you do. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say thank you to everybody too, but I really want to thank my colleagues because you make this job, even though it's rigorous and it can be daunting sometimes, it's really been fun. I get up every day and I look forward to going to work because of my colleagues. But I also look forward to going to work every day because of our administrative staff. So all these folks at the table that work for us every day to make us look good, even when we become very silly, Fred, which I know. really help us move forward with the policies and keep us on track. So I would like everybody to give a hand to our administrative staff as well as our economic development.
Well, I want to thank the Chamber and all the co-sponsors for the event. I want to thank the team here because we do some great stuff. I want to thank Ken because he always seems to know the facts. And one is, we get 18 cents out of every dollar, and I think we do a damn good job with what we get. The Sunrise, Clackamas to Columbia, McLaughlin, we've got a lot of work to do, but we're working well. I think our relationships, I have lunch with the chairs from the metro region and with President Peterson. We have a great relationship. When we want a project, we call them up and say, will you support us? Hillsborough called me the other day. Will you support this? Beaverton called me. Will you support this? And I'll say, yes, will you support this? I mean, that's what relationships are. So I want to again thank staff. And our door is always open, so please come visit us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, well, that concludes our 2020 State of the County